My name is Peter Richards. I am a senior SEO manager and I'm based in the UK and I work for Jellyfish. What I'll be covering today: recognizing key features in Google SERPs, understanding how search engines work, and spotlighting the fundamentals of on-site SEO to assist your website. Why is SEO important? 80% of all internet sessions involve a user visiting a search engine. So what is SEO anyway? Search engine optimization, or SEO, is the process of improving the visibility of your web pages in a search engine's organic, natural, or unpaid results. So we're all familiar with search engines, particularly Google and Bing, but what are we actually seeing here on this Google search page? Increasing real estate is being dominated by Google paid areas, such as paid ads. Those are the top 4 that you see. And also, down to the right, the Google Merchant Center shopping feed, which is part of Google's aggressive monetization strategy. As part of this strategy, the organic results are pushed further down below the fold, or what we refer to as the visible area of the user's screen, making it much harder to find. If your site ranks on page 2 for Google for your keywords, then forget it. There's not much chance that anyone's actually going to visit your site. Indeed, 75% of users do not actually go past the first page of a search result. So how do search engines actually work? Google uses 3 steps to display a page in its search results. The first one, the crawler, or search bot as it's sometimes known, is a highly sophisticated piece of software designed to discover billions of pages across the internet. The indexer. The indexer receives pages from the crawler, analyzes and indexes the content, considers links, and renders the page. Rendering is the process of reading the source code and then building the page. This is what Google does. It builds the page in a browser very similar to the browser that everybody uses. And the query engine. This interprets the intention of the user's search query. It retrieves the best matching document from the index and ranks the page accordingly. Developing an SEO strategy within the build. What are the SEO success factors for a website? Basically, the elements that you have are either on page or off page. These elements are either direct or indirect. On page, you have direct control with the experience that you offer, the content that you create, and how it's displayed visibly. Off page, you have indirect influence. This is readers sharing content across social networks, commenting on blogs or within forums, or publishers referencing content on their own blog, or perhaps maybe linking back to your site. Google uses thousands of signals to rank web pages, and nobody actually knows what they all are. Anyone who claims that they do are actually fibbing. In fact, since the rise of machine learning, not even the people that work at Google can tell you all the elements that influence ranking. Borrowing from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we now have Maslow's hierarchy of SEO needs. And it all begins with a solid foundation. So crawl accessibility, this is technical SEO, the bedrock of a healthy site, where you should be creating a structure that can be easily accessed and crawled by search engines through good on-site linking and navigation. Creating content. This will satisfy the user's needs of the original search query in Google. Researching and discovering keywords that describe your products or services, then ensuring that these are included on your pages. Good UX. Slow sites create bad experiences, and no one hangs around waiting for a site to load, right? Also, it's a ranking factor. Shareworthy. If your content is fulfilling a user's need, it may be shared and ultimately earn links, which in a sense helps it to rank much, much higher. And meta titles and descriptions should contain keywords, as it helps Google to understand the content of the page. A good description will encourage users to click through to your site from a search page. Mobile search now dominates and is set to grow. As mentioned, I think in the previous session, over 60% of searches are now on mobile devices. So make sure your site's responsive and mobile friendly. In 2017, Google switched to mobile first index. So it actually expects sites to be responsive now. What are responsive sites? Responsive sites are able to collapse their structures perfectly so they appear exactly the same on a desktop as they do on a mobile, but they're much easier to read on a mobile device. And as a bonus, responsive sites also rank much, much better. If you want to test to see whether your site is mobile friendly, you can use the Google mobile testing tool, which is listed here. Technical SEO. According to Google, up to 40% of people abandon sites after 3 seconds. This makes the perception of page speed massively important. Get it wrong on your site and you risk increasing your bounce rates. The bounce rates, as we understand, is a user that immediately leaves your site without visiting another page or goes straight back to the search engine to complete another query. So get it wrong and your bounce rates will increase. Also, at the same time, your conversion rates will decrease and ultimately your rankings will suffer. So therefore, use Google's PageSpeed tool to test your site speed. As Richard said previously, this is easily accessible to anyone. You can put your URL in and you can get a sense of where you are at the moment, and it gives you opportunities to work towards optimizing your site for improved page speed. On-page SEO. Understanding the user's intent behind a search query is massively important. When the search intention is known, it's much easier to identify where content should be created to serve a user's need as they progress along that sales funnel. There's 4 classifications for user's intent. Number 1, informational, or the awareness phase. This is where users are researching the need for a product. Now here's an example. Best winter boots. The search volume is incredibly high, but the conversion rate is low. Number 2, commercial, or the consideration phase, where users are aware of the product or service, but they now need to know who the best providers are. The example here is women's boots. Search volume is still high, but the conversion rate has dropped. It's slightly lower, it's medium. And third, transactional, or what we call the conversion phase, where users are specifically targeting a product or service they've already had a touch point with at some point and are ready to buy the product or perhaps download a PDF. An example here is buy red women's boots. The intention here is the word buy. The search volume here is lower still, but the conversion rate, as you notice, begins to creep up. And the final one from user search intent is a navigational intent. Now, this is where a user specifically includes a brand name in the search at any point within their trip down the funnel. This is very specific, so the search volume is even lower, but the conversion rate is massively higher. Research your keywords and build your pages with high value, well-written content and a structure that allows you to convey the purpose of the page. Very important, the purpose of the page. The way that keywords are organized on a page greatly influences how search engines extract relationships and determine topics for a particular page. Using the concept of location, frequency, and distance can help strengthen these relationships. For example, location is really important, as keywords should be placed in titles, the main heading, the main H1 heading, I should say, the H2 subheadings, and the primary content blocks. Frequency is how often important phrases and variants appear on the page. And distance is the proximity of related phrases to each other, either within content or within HTML elements, such as anchor text within internal links. So what about URLs? Keep them short, simple, and descriptive. Use lowercase characters. Uppercase characters, or as we know, caps, that shouts. It also is difficult for search engines to read within browsers. So keep it to lowercase. Use a primary key phrase. The example I've got here shows a good example where the key phrase has been included in the URL and the title. Now, the primary key phrase should definitely be in the URL, because if the title is either missing or is not informative, then the URL can take over that process and Google can understand what that content's all about. There's a bonus here as well. It's what we've called a mild ranking factor to include the keyword within your URL. Make sure you use hyphens and not underscores. Underscores, again, are difficult to track. Avoid spaces left between words. That's very important. Don't use stop words such as a, the, and, or, but. They're unnecessary in URLs. Google can still understand the meaning of the page. Avoid abusing parameters such as those illustrated here. There are exceptions to the rule. You might be using parameters, for example, UTM codes from Google Analytics. This is okay, but they have to be managed carefully to avoid the creation of duplicate content. Also, avoid using reserved characters. These are reserved for technical purposes. So don't use those in URLs as well. They don't mean anything and they're not easy to understand. Optimize your image for speed. Use correctly sized images. Avoid browser scaling. When I say browser scaling, what I mean by that is if you ask somebody to download an image that's not been scaled and properly sized, the browser has to do this, which creates additional bandwidth, additional server load, which slows your speed down. your page speed down. Use different sizes for mobile and desktop. Don't expect your users on a mobile device to download a massive panoramic image that's designed for a desktop. They won't like you for it. Use the correct compression types. For example, JPEG for halftone photographs, PNGs, where you might need a transparent background, and SVG, scalable images. Don't use images that are slow to load, and don't use image URLs that are unreadable. Otherwise, these are unlikely to be included in Google's image search, as Google cannot penetrate an image to know what it is. It has to rely on signals such as the URL naming or the alt text description. In the example that we've got here, you can see that Google's machine learning ID tool is 91% sure that the image is a piece of cheese, where in fact we know it's butter. But if the webmaster had included the alt tag butter, then that would have been unequivocal and Google would have understood that as being butter. So don't give Google a choice, basically. Use the alt tag, describe what the image is, and you stand much better chance of the image being indexed and presented within Google image search. So don't forget your meta descriptions. Because without a meta description, users are being given no incentive to click through to a website from the search page. And they will likely click back or go to another site. This is the perfect area to create a simple, actionable message that entitles or entices users to click. Make them work hard for your page, i.e., limit the text to 156 characters, no more, so it doesn't get truncated or cut off in the search. Believe it or not, that's quite a common error. As you can see, this one contains a keyword, cleaning services, and two simple call to actions, book and check prices, giving the user two reasons to visit your site. Leverage title tags. Titles, or also known as meta titles, enable users and search engines to understand what the page is all about. The example here that you can see is cleaning services. Usually, meta content, titles and descriptions, are written by content, editorial, and sometimes SEO teams as well. It's our advice to include the primary keyword that you want to rank in Google, make it compelling to encourage a click-through, and most importantly, keep it under 60 characters, otherwise you risk losing it. In the example you see here, it can be quite confusing to users who have to try and understand or guess what the truncated title is actually trying to convey. So keep it short, keep it within 60 characters. What are we seeing here? The chart here summarizes how many small to medium businesses are employing some of these SEO must-haves. It's good to see that nearly 100% are using a title tag, for example. It was quite surprising to me that less than 75% have a proper heading, or H1, really important to include within your template so that users and search engines again get an understanding of what's on your page. And absolutely shocking that only 72% of these had a meta description. So how they imagine that somebody will actually choose their listing in a search page and click through on it when there's no visible meta description is beyond me. So just to summarize very quickly, ensure your website is mobile friendly, to back up what my colleagues have said earlier on. Make sure your website is as fast as possible. Ensure your website structure is accessible to search engines and users. Find relevant keywords that match your user's search intent. Create and optimize pages for SEO, for search engines and for users. Choose simple and well-defined URLs, and make sure that all your pages have titles and descriptions. Thank you very much.